For decades, passing the Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination (UTME) has been one of the biggest academic hurdles for millions of Nigerian students seeking higher education. But now, the federal government has taken a major step that could reshape teacher education in Nigeria. Candidates seeking admission into Nigerian Certificate in Education (NCE) programs in colleges of education will no longer need to sit for JAMB's UTME examination. Instead, applicants can gain admission with only 4 relevant O-level credits. Supporters describe the policy as a practical solution to Nigeria's worsening teacher shortage and collapsing enrollment in colleges of education. Critics, however, fear that the move could further weaken academic standards and reinforce the perception that teaching is becoming a profession of last resort. So, is this reform a rescue plan for teachers' education, or a dangerous lowering of standard in a country already battling an academic and education crisis? Understanding the policy shifts and decision effectively removes one more admission barriers for students seeking NCE qualifications. Traditionally, JAMB UTME has served as the central screening system for tertiary institutions in Nigeria. Universities, polytechnics, colleges of education have relied on UTME scores as part of their admission processes. Under the new arrangement, candidates applying for NCE programs in colleges of education can now gain admission without writing UTME, provided they pass the required O-level credits. Government officials argue that the policy is designed to increase access to teaching education, reduce financial pressure on students, revive struggling colleges of education, address the shortage of qualified teachers nationwide. But the announcement immediately sparked debate across the education sector. Why are colleges of education struggling? To understand the policy, it is important to first understand the deep crisis facing colleges of education in Nigeria. Over the years, many colleges of education have witnessed declining enrollment numbers. Some institutions reportedly struggle to fill classrooms despite having large facilities and academic staff. Several reasons explain this trend. Number one is teaching has lost economic attraction. Many Nigerian youths no longer see teaching as financially rewarding. Teachers in many states still face poor salaries, delayed payment, limited career growth, poor working conditions. For many families, teaching is viewed as a survival profession rather than an aspirational career. In a country where unemployment and economic hardship are rising, students increasingly prefer courses linked to higher paying sectors like technology, engineering, medical, finance, or international migration opportunities. We also have universities becoming more attractive. Another major issue is prestige. For years, many students saw colleges of education as alternative only when university admission failed. As university expanded and private university increased, many candidates abandoned NCE pathway entirely. This created a perception problem. Universities become first choice, while colleges of education become fallback institutions. Critics fear the new policy could worsen that perception. We also have the rising cost of JAMB and admission processes. Many students repeatedly spend money on JAMB registration, CBT centers fee, UTME screening, transportation, and logistics for low-income families. Repeated failed attempts at UTME can become financially exhausting. Removing UTME for NCE candidates would therefore widen access for students from poorer backgrounds, especially in rural communities. Is the government quietly admitting the NCE system is failing? This is one of the most controversial questions surrounding the reform. Some analysts believe the policy is effectively an acknowledgement that Nigeria's teaching education system is in distress. When the government lowers admission barriers for a specific educational pathway, critics often interpret it as an attempt to rescue declining enrollment, and the reality is difficult to ignore. Many colleges of education across Nigeria operate below capacity. Some educational experts argue that without urgent intervention, several colleges of education could become financially unsustainable. For this perspective, the policy may not simply be an educational reform. It may also be an institutional survival strategy. The teacher shortage crisis, despite concerns about standard, the government argument is not without merit. Nigeria faces a serious teacher shortage problem. International organizations, local education groups, and state government have repeatedly raised concerns about insufficient qualified teachers, overcrowded classrooms, unqualified teaching personnel, poor foundational literacy and numeracy outcomes in many rural schools. One teacher may handle multiple subjects or multiple class levels simultaneously. Some schools rely heavily on temporary or unqualified teachers because certified educators are unavailable. If colleges of education continue experiencing low enrollment, and long-term consequences for basic education become severe. For this perspective, simplifying access into teacher training may be viewed as an emergency intervention rather than a lowering of standard. But does easier admission mean lower quality? This is where the debate becomes more complicated. Critics argue that moving UTME may weaken merit-based screening. The concern is not merely about examinations, it is about what the policy symbolically communicates. In many countries where teaching is highly respected, such as Finland, Singapore, and parts of East Asia, teachers' recruitment is often extremely competitive. Teaching is treated as a high-skill national development profession. In contrast, if Nigeria appears to be making entry into teacher education easier, while other sectors remain competitive, critics fear this could further reduce the social status of teachers. Some education stakeholders worry that weaker students may dominate teaching training academic. Standards could decline, public confidence in NCE qualification may weaken, primary and secondary education quality could deteriorate over time. This concern is especially important because teacher quality directly affects national productivity, literacy, and long-term economic growth. Quantity versus quality. At the heart of the debate is one difficult question: is Nigeria prioritizing the number of teachers over the quality of teachers? Supporters of the reform argue that UTME itself does not automatically measure teaching ability. A student may fail UTME due to poor CBT exposure, financial difficulties, examination anxiety, or repeated technical problems, not necessarily because the student lacks teaching potential. They argue that what matters more is quality teacher training, strong classroom supervision, effective curriculum delivery, continuous professional development. In other words, admission standards alone do not determine educational quality. Critics, however, counter that lowering entry barriers without significantly improving teacher training institutions could create a large pool of poorly prepared teachers, and that could deepen Nigeria's learning crisis rather than solve it. Could rural and poor students benefit? One of the strongest arguments in favor of the policy is accessibility. Students from disadvantaged backgrounds are often disproportionately affected by costly examination cycles, limited CBT exposure, poor internet infrastructure, weak secondary school preparation. Removing UTME may create alternative pathway into higher education for thousands of young Nigerians who might otherwise abandon education entirely. This could especially benefit rural students, low-income household students in underserved northern and riverine communities, female students facing financial barriers, many families avoiding repeated JAMB registration fees, may provide meaningful financial relief. What happened to JAMB's role? The policy also raises institutional questions. JAMB was established to standardize tertiary admissions and reduce irregularities. If exemption gradually expand beyond colleges of education, questions could emerge about admission, uniformity, national quality control, equity access, tertiary institutions. Some observers may eventually ask, if NCE candidates can gain admission without UTME, should polytechnics or specialized institutions receive similar flexibility? That debate could become politically sensitive in the future. Public reactions and divided reactions across the education sector have been sharply divided. Government officials defending the policy argue that Nigeria urgently needs more teachers. UTME has become financially burdensome. Colleges of education require revitalization. Access to teacher education must expand. They insist the reform should not automatically be interpreted as lowering standards. Education experts, some lecturers, and policy analysts support the move continuously, but insist quality assurance must improve simultaneously. They argue that teacher training curriculum must be strengthened, accreditation system must be stricter, practical teaching supervision must improve. Without these reforms, they warn, easier admission alone may not solve deeper structural problems. Teachers Union. Some teachers union are likely to support efforts aimed at increasing teacher supply, particularly in underserved areas. However, many educators also emphasize that recruitment alone is insufficient without better salaries, improved welfare, professional respect, safer working environment. Parents and students, for many parents, the policy will be welcomed as a financial relief measure, but others fear it could devalue NCE qualifications and create concerns about educational credibility. The bigger national question ultimately is, this debate goes beyond UTME. It touches the deeper identity crisis within Nigeria's education system. May country improve educational outcome while the teaching profession continue losing prestige? Can teacher shortages be solved without making teaching economically attractive? Can educational quality improve if the best performing students continue avoiding teacher education? These are the difficult questions policymakers must confront, because the long-term future of Nigeria's education system will depend not only on how many teachers are produced, but on how competent, motivated, and respected these teachers become. Final insight: the federal government's decision to remove UTME requirement for NCE admissions may increase access and temporarily revive struggling colleges of education. But access alone does not guarantee quality. If the reform is not accompanied by better teacher welfare, stronger training standards, improved funding, modern teaching facilities, and professional incentives, Nigeria may simply produce more teachers without solving the deeper crisis in learning outcomes. The real challenge is not merely getting students into colleges of education. The real challenge is rebuilding public confidence in teaching itself. And until teaching becomes a respected and economically attractive profession again, Nigeria's education crisis will continue regardless of how admission policies change. I rest my case. Please join the next analysis. Stay blessed.